I'm going to stop you there because telling the audience it's amazing and that they're going to have great results. So where's the proof in that? When you read the script, you actually don't always have to improvise. Welcome to Simple Sense for Small Business, mistakes we have seen and made so you can avoid them. And it has been quite the year, 2022, and September is the new January, and we're back. Today's podcast, we're going to be talking about hiring practices, specifically something that we've dubbed the Trevor Method. And Trevor is going to be defining what that means and why he gets his own name on a hiring practice. And we're going to be covering 5 main points of how to deploy this hiring practice. Let's start, Trev, with you defining why it's called the Trevor Method.
Boom.
Mic drop.
The Trevor Method is something I used in my previous career in the mortgage business, where I set standards and I set boundaries on how I was going to conduct my business, who I was going to conduct that business with. And with that method, I quadrupled my income, my anxiety levels went down. But today, the Trevor Method with hiring practices, let's get right into it. Number 1, actions speak louder than words.
People will tell you how they feel without telling you, if you know what I mean, and you should believe them.
You'll save yourself a lot of agita and grief later on.
We instinctively know some of the signals and we choose to ignore them because it might be like, oh, well, that's going to change, or that's just a one-time thing, or I can't afford to lose this person, so I'm going to just tolerate it silently.
Or I really need to hire this person, so I'm going to ignore that.
It's a pink flag, not a red flag.
I like that, pink flag.
I can't say that I made it up, actually. It was a boyfriend who showed me some pink flags that really turned out to be red, but that's a different podcast. All right, what's next?
Next on the Trevor Method list, strict standards of doing business, the ideal client, reflection on and respect for my own value, desire to do business only with people who understand and respect my experience, knowledge, and methods. Or in other words, folks who value me for who I am rather than the price for my services.
That sounds like boundaries and the establishing of one's own values to honor the boundaries, which actually
Absolutely.
is going to be a whole separate podcast. Let's go on to the next
Boom.
one.
Next on the Trevor Method for hiring practices, create a funneling process to help prospective clients fire themselves, or in the hiring practice, to help prospective employees fire themselves before you even meet them, talk to them, hire them.
This is actually the origin of the Trevor Method. When you were working with mortgage clients on the gateway, if they didn't do what you said, well, oh, you're interested in buying a house, okay, send me a text with your email so I can send you the credit report authorization form. If they didn't do that right away, they weren't super serious, or maybe you just surmised they were tire kickers.
Going back to actions speak louder than words. The people who turned out to be the absolute best clients, when I said, okay, as soon as we hang up this call, please send me a text message with your email address, the best client said, oh, I just texted it to you while you were talking.
They understood your value before you even started the process, the formal process.
And the worst folks, the ones who I wound up saying, under the Trevor Method standards, no, I'm not doing business with you. A day and a half later, I'm still waiting for the text message.
You just saved yourself some time versus chasing a prospect or an interviewee. It's like, okay, well, they're not super into this, so they must have other options, so I'm not even going to consider them as an option.
I love that you said chasing a prospect. That was definitely a key element, because not only did I realize that the people I was chasing, they didn't become clients at all because they didn't get my value, or they were a nightmare to work with if they became a client. But the time I was spending chasing them, I could have been doing any number of other things. I'm recalling a conversation we had not too many months ago with a business client of ours, a restaurant, where we were talking about hiring practices. The owner and the head chef, when I was discussing this with them, they came up with all these objections that potential employees came up with about working for them. Objections like they've got no culinary experience and they don't want to come in and wash dishes and clean the bathrooms. They want to go right to head chef. And I I said to them, yes, because you don't have these types of standards in place. And those types of conversations should have told them right off the bat, I'm not chasing this person.
Right. Why bother even scheduling something? You have 3 to 5 questions that you have satisfactory responses that would indicate their level or their expectation so that you can determine like, all right, we'll get back to you, or something where you're not even wasting your time bringing them in or being disappointed when they don't show up because they've said everything in the first phone call.
Both of which they did. They brought the people in, or they scheduled an appointment and the people were no-shows. Meanwhile, out of the gate, these people told them by their actions.
We did that with our EIDL. We had a online form you had to complete. And the purpose of this was, number one, for our own protection, because we wanted to understand the dynamic of their loan process. And also, it did tell us within the interaction whether or not we would be able to consider working with them. And we saved so much time.
We dodged some really quote unquote bad client bullets.
Yeah.
If you've noticed, we're kind of beating this point to death because this is really the core element of the Trevor Method. And you'll see in a moment when we talk about other facets of it, how it's going to save you time, grief, and agita, and you will find better quality candidates who will turn out to be, in most cases, not all, great employees. What you want to do is you want to refuse to do business with anyone who fails at any stage of the funneling process. Think of it like baseball, 3 strikes and you're out. Understand something. What the Trevor Method did for my business and what it will do for you in your hiring practices is amazing. I promise you the results are going to blow your mind.
Telling the audience it's amazing and that they're going to have great results is, where's the proof in that? Give them something to gauge the success that they could anticipate or the actual awareness of understanding the time they saved.
A good example of that is when you have your initial inquiry and you ask them to upload their resume or email you the resume, time it. People who are serious about finding a job, becoming employed, and or being employed by you, that resume shows up right away. Create another test for them, something else. You read the resume and immediately you shoot back saying, okay, I see you saying references upon request. I'm hereby requesting your references, and see how long it takes them to get back to you, the references.
Okay. So
and these are very short things you can do. You could create templates for these, text message or email templates, although we recommend email because it's easier to track. But you create templates and then just set it and forget it. And you're not chasing people. One important note about Trevor Method type of practices, with my business in the past, with our EIDL business, and with you as you're implementing these in the hiring practices, this will not completely eliminate bad prospects.
Or aggravation or frustration.
It doesn't. But what it does is it absolutely improves the quality of your prospects.
Well, and the process.
And your overall experience of conducting business.
Yeah. Streamlines everything and makes everything more efficient because you have established a template of actions to save time versus reinventing the wheel all the time.
You know, you have to kind of think of it like an assembly line on a factory.
It takes time though, and that initial doing of the thing that it will be the template, you got to start somewhere with taking the time, making the time to do it.
Creating the standards.
Okay, what's next? How would someone incorporate these Trevor Method practices into their own protocols, right? Before we get into that, let's first survey the current hiring employment landscape.
Ooh, yes, great idea.
It was in the script, so yeah.
Shortage of potential employees.
People want better wages and a better working condition.
Excellent opportunities for the best businesses to get the best people on their teams and to be the quote-unquote cream that rises to the top. Or the small business Darwinian version of quote-unquote survival of the fittest.
Your business competition, so many small business owners operate as if it's still 2019. To differentiate yourself, you want a longer term vision of the future of work and the future of the workplace in America. COVID really impacted so many millions of people emotionally and physically. The mindset has changed with how people are conducting themselves with their own personal standards. We're talking about these standards and practices and all of that. if the general public, for their own personal wellness, is adjusting their standards for what is acceptable to them, then I think, small business owners can't put their head in the sand or
No.
sweep under the rug the fact that you have to approach this with some more care and mindfulness of what people are tolerating or not tolerating. Now it's just kind of the extreme of consciousness.
I think we've agreed time and time again in our live videos on our other channel, in our Simple Sense podcast, COVID changed everything. If you want to be present and accounted for and successful now, in the now, you've got to change everything too. We already know that employees have changed their mindset.
Yeah.
It just seems there's this lag with employers catching up to that change. So that's why we're doing this podcast today, this video today, to share with you, change now, so that you can be resilient within the marketplace and to focus on our primary objective here on Simple Sense, so you can be profitable and you can enjoy the business you own instead of having a job that you own, right?
Those of us who may not be able to switch on a dime, I think the first thing you can do is take an inventory of how things are in your business.
Oh, I love
to plan or plan to test to plan.
The universe is cold and uncaring, and if you don't have any proof of that before COVID, you sure as heck have proof of it now with what COVID has brought onto the planet and your lives professionally and personally. Ooh, I hate the phrase change is inevitable, but it is, because it's all around us. Where we fall down and fail is be aware of it and plan to plan. I wanted to make another quick note, which is actually not part of our script today, which is the media. If you are, as I am, an avid consumer of newspaper articles, magazine articles about the things that interest me, including small business topics, you're seeing a lot of articles in business publications, in regular newspapers, in their business sections, talking about all of the worst aspects, if you will, of the new paradigm of employment landscape in the United States. The whole Great Resignation.
The Great Pause or something.
The Great Pause. And now the latest one is quietly quitting. Don't get too misled by those headlines, because those headlines are essentially clickbait. They're designed to get you to tune in, read the article. Yes, there is some value in them, but what we're trying to do here with our podcast today is to present to you kind of a set of standards that helps you have an alternative to the headlines.
Well, there was a statistic on the feel-good stories compared to the, what do they call it?
If it bleeds, it leads.
The headlines are meant to induce fear and worry and doubt. You have to temper how you're consuming that stuff.
Your next step for you to create your own set of quote-unquote Trevor Method standards. Are you ready? You don't actually need a pen and a paper for this, because you can scroll back and watch this on the replay.
Okay, first up is standards. What's your vision of how you want to conduct your business, the personality characteristics of you, your business, and the culture within your business? You have to know and respect yourself first before you can go out there and begin finding the ideal employees. And then, who is your ideal employee? Write down those characteristics.
Next in your Trevor Method planning is figuring out where you stand and where you are and where you want to be with wages. The biggest unknown, and also the biggest competitive failure, is knowing the ideal wage to pay people. We have seen so many small business owners think they are paying enough even after substantially increasing their wage offerings. But you have to do your homework. You have to know, what is your competition paying? What is the national average for a similar position in your business? The U.S. Department of Labor can help with their overview of wage data for hundreds of occupations. Here's the link. Think New York Yankees. Not only is there prestige for playing for this premier baseball team, but the team hires the best talent and pays for that talent. The Yankees can do this because, first and foremost, they understand their true value, business, and as an employer. Pricing. If you pay a higher wage, how does this impact pricing of your products and services? Many small business owners are terrified of raising prices for fear of losing customers. Linda Ray and I believe that customers will pay higher prices for the best quality service and experience. You cannot provide those three things with subpar employees on your team. Plus, there are other ways you can reduce the impact of higher wages on your pricing calculus.
The next is one of my favorites, and we don't even know we're doing it. Excuses. Media sells itself by selling bad news. We just talked about this earlier. If you know your standards, if you know what you want to achieve, you can easily ignore the bad news about pricing and wages and employee shortages. Don't let external forces give you permission to make excuses. Create your own standards for your business and for wages and charge forward. Love this so much. I think excuses are so embedded in our fiber that we don't even know we're doing it half the time, that they're excuses.
Absolutely. I'm guilty of that. You know that.
We're all guilty of it. We all give ourselves permission.
Hey, listen, don't story top me. Don't excuse story top me. I'm more guilty of that than you are.
I love what I just said. If you give yourself permission to have the excuse, that's fine. But also you want to give yourself some time to prepare to overcome whatever it is that's causing you to delay or procrastinate the issue.
I love that. Yeah, exactly.
I know some stuff.
You know some stuff. And the next Trevor Method section is about culture. If you don't know what your internal business culture is, or you don't think you have one, better hurry up and get one together, because potential employees want the experience of working to be better, not just their salaries. Here's some things for you to consider for your business culture. First, inclusivity. Are you honoring the identities of historically underrepresented people? Next, positivity. You and your managers promote a positive reinforcement method of workplace standards, or do you follow those worn out tropes of negative embellishments?
On culture, with the point about it's not just about salaries, there are people out there that they may be driven by money to pay their bills, but they're more driven for having some freedom of flexible schedule. So it's not always about money that is motivating. So that's the thing you have to determine about who your employees are and what they're made of, because we're talking about wages and prices, but sometimes it's about other things too, benefits. And that's actually what's next is benefits. So let's go there. Besides salaries, what do you offer your employees by way of benefits, including healthcare, flexible scheduling, vacation, sick time, and training? I mean, see, it was in the script and I just went into it and then there we are. It just flowed really nicely.
So we've talked about these other concepts for you to create your own Trevor Method. Here's the final piece of the process, the puzzle, the assembly line, if you will, in creating your Trevor Method standards for you and your business and your hiring practices. Hiring funnel. Sales is about channeling, removing what's the phrase? The wheat from the chaff, eliminating the negative and accentuating the positive.
All right, the first one is the most difficult part of the hiring funnel is standing firmly by your standards, saying no, and standing by that decision. Oh boy, that's hard. It's too easy to relax a standard of hiring for the sake of getting the body in the door. Yeah. Do not do it. You must say no if someone does not comply with your standards. You have to have the standards, which we talked about in the beginning. No shortcuts. You have to establish the standards. Otherwise, you're going to be spinning wheels and reinventing wheels.
This may be the most difficult part of it, this whole thing of saying no and standing your ground. But when you honor your boundaries, you feel so much better about yourself.
Well, it's an empowerment process.
I love that word. You are empowered. You're self-empowering yourself with these standards.
Next is going to be to create behavioral tests. That sounds so scientific.
It's not.
For example, in your job posting ad, include 3 response action items such as please reply with your email address and cell phone number, the status of your current employment, and a brief description of your experience with this position. Notice in this funnel activity, there is no mention of submitting a resume because anyone can do that, and employment candidates expect that. Instead, there are 3 unique actionable items. Any candidate who fails to submit all 3 items is automatically disqualified. This is your first no. Showing up on time for the face-to-face meeting is one of the final action items. Even 1 minute of lateness of any reason is an automatic disqualifier. Anyone worthy of working for you must take this opportunity as seriously as you do. They must appreciate their own self-worth and want to find the best employment fit for their own personal work standards. I have something to say about this because first of all, you know I'm always 10 minutes late and you hate it. You need to be 10 minutes early to be on time.
15.
And it's a huge contention between us on a regular basis. Well, we really don't go anywhere as often.
Well, because COVID changed everything at our business, so we don't really have to be anywhere on time anymore.
But let's go back to 1990, shall we? In fact, it was this month in September of 1990 where I got my first real official job after college, not in the family business. I was living in Atlanta. In 1990, there was no GPS, so I had a paper map and there were no cell phones. So I had to stop at a hotel or somewhere where there was a payphone. I got lost and I was panicked naturally and normally because I knew I was going to be late because I couldn't find the place. And I was 5 minutes late and I was so panicked. I walked in a complete panic, and it was Atlanta and there was some Southern charm going on. And the woman who was ultimately my boss, because she hired me even though I was late, she took my hand and like patted her hand on top of my hand and was like, "Don't worry about it, darling. It's fine." This whole like immediate disqualifier is a little sharp for me. It's a little jarring for me to be so black and white, but I get it. It's a balance. You know, you want to be firm with yourself because you have your standards and you want to save some time with, people that are wasting your time.
I take a completely different perspective. For me, it's a disqualifier. It's not 1990 anymore. With all of the organizational tools provided by these devices here and the employment landscape where people want not just higher wages, but they want quality employment, I don't believe that being late because you got lost is a valid excuse anymore. Sorry, I don't.
Okay.
By contrast, back in the 1980s, when I worked still in the corporate world, I was part of a training team in upper management where we would go around to different regions of the company and train employees in different facets. It was security, it was marketing, other items. And the director of training and education in the company, a wonderful man named Marshall, I won't say his last name, but Marshall was great. I learned a lot from him. He had a rule. If the training session, the class started at 1 o'clock, at 1 o'clock on the dot, he locked the door because in the company, they had the day off to attend this training session. So it wasn't like they had to go to work and then get stuck with a customer and then have to rush to a training session. We gave them the time. It was part of our process. And I'll tell you, it set a tone for the session that brought a whole different sense of enthusiasm and dedication to learning the material.
Well, I do think there is a bit of a lackadaisical posturing. I kind of feel like when I was younger and parents who seemed so much older than me, you'd hear them say, well, kids these days,
Oh, they're still saying it.
I'm kind of saying it. Sometimes, like I see stuff like
that having these Trevor Method standards for hiring practices, it's not 100% guaranteed, locked in, written in stone. All it does is it improves your overall experience. And sure, there could very well be a potential Linda Ray showing up at your business who shows up 15 minutes late and maybe has a very valid reason.
I was there for 9 years, so.
Well, they got a crazy valuable. I mean, she is crazy, but when I say crazy valuable, I mean crazy valuable. Too often, we saw this in our business, and when I was still, up until 2018, in the mortgage banking business, I saw this time and again with people. They simply don't respect your time. That's why I'm saying that this is an automatic disqualifier. Next step in your hiring funnel, eliminate candidates. You want to eliminate candidates at different stages of the funnel. Think of your funnel as a U.S. Navy SEALs obstacle course. If a candidate fails along the way, they're out. There are no second chances. Linda, why don't you tell them the final 2 concepts in creating your own hiring method funnel?
Well, first you want to sell not just the wages, but the experience and the workplace of providing that experience.
Yeah.
And then the final of the final is the face-to-face. Do you want to expound on that at
Well, a
all
little
with the
bit
face-to-face?
about the total experience. So a few moments ago, I mentioned a former client of ours, a restaurant client, and he and the top chef, the head chef, were complaining about people who come in. They don't want to wash dishes. They want to be head chef, but they've literally never cooked anything in their lives.
They romanticize the idea of a particular position.
Yeah,
versus...
and they think they've watched a couple of YouTube videos and can boil an egg, and so they can come in and prepare chicken cordon bleu. And again, my querying in that conversation with them was all around the standards. And in my opinion, those types of people, they shouldn't even have engaged with them to that level. But should you have gone through all of your funnel, your best practices, standards to get to this point, and you're in the face-to-face, okay, and you're selling the experience of your restaurant or your small business or your factory or your consulting practice, the discussion of the culture and the workplace and the experience is a really good way for you to overcome other hazards, if you will, in the interview process, or obstacles, or, as we say in the sales business, objections. The person who has passed all of your funneling tests, see, this restaurant didn't have any funneling tests. So assuming you've got them, and this person now is sitting in front of you face to face, and this nonsense comes up where, well, I'm coming in for the executive position. Wait, executive? You're still in high school. You're in face to face. The great way to get past that is to not dismiss that person out of hand, because remember, their actions have proven their worth of getting to this face-to-face point. You want to use the discussion of what it's like working here.
That was a lot. I'm going to put it in terms like, okay, you're reading a book, and one of the things, if an author is really good, is putting you right in the setting of where they are in the book. If it's, a scene where they're in a restaurant, they're describing parts of the restaurant, they're describing what's going on around the whole protagonist, right? So you can visualize, even though you're not there, what it's like to be there in the story. Your business has its own story. So you want to sell the story of the business and the experience and the culture and things that make up this living, breathing thing that is your business, and why they want to be a part of it, and be the author of the story and put them in the story.
I love that. That's exactly what I meant.
And since we brought up about excuses, you're going to want to watch this video, this podcast, because we talk about not making excuses.
My name is Trevor, and this lovely lady is Linda Ray. And we want to thank you for tuning in today to Simple Sense for Small Business. And we hope you are going to hit the subscribe button and hit the reminder button and the little notifications so you find out when we drop some more episodes in the future.